Hi YouTube, it is time for my review of Paranormal Activity 3. Now, I have to apologise because this review did take a long time for me to do, and that is because I did not have the DVD yet, and although I saw it in cinemas, it wasn't really fresh in my mind enough to do a review on it. But I watched the movie last night and it is completely fresh in my mind. Now, I've already done a review on the first Paranormal Activity movie and the second, so I thought I may as well do the third one now. And Paranormal Activity 2 is directed by Henry Joyce and Ariel Shawman. I think that's how you pronounce their names, but I'm sorry if it's not. And it's on for 81 minutes. And yeah, and just as a heads up, there are no spoilers in this review until the end, and I'll warn you before they are coming. So at the moment, you do not need to worry about spoilers. Okay, I will give a very brief description of what it's about first. Okay, so Paranormal Activity 3 is a prequel to the first two movies, and although Paranormal Activity 2 was sort of a prequel, that was a parallel prequel. Paranormal Activity 3 is completely a prequel. All of it is set in the 80s, following Katie and Christy as children, and it kind of explores the origins of what happened to them as kids. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say for now. So, I want to get one thing perfectly straight. Paranormal Activity 3 is my least favourite out of the three. But that does not mean to say I did not like the movie, because I did. Okay, one of the best things about the third one, I'd say, would be the ending. The ending of this movie is epic. Alright? Now, I'm not going to go into detail yet, because it's not the spoiler section. But I'd say it had the best ending of all three of them. The ending is really, really chilling, and like the second movie's ending, it does leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger, so you're really curious to see what happens in Paranormal Activity 4, which is coming out in October 2012, so this year. So I love the ending. Yeah, it was pretty slow paced, the ending, and is really, really creepy and chilling. And also, in this one, they introduced a new camera style, the fan cam, as people like to call it. Now, in the first Paranormal Activity movie, they just use security, not security cameras, they just use one handheld camera. In the second movie, they expanded it with security cameras. Now, in the third movie, they expanded it to the next step with the fan camera. And if you're wondering, it's kind of a camera set up on the fan, so it kind of rotates back and forth like this. And I thought that was probably the best use of camera in any of the Paranormal Activity movies. They're really amping up the camera. Now, I'm ignoring the fact that the camera was HD and in the 80s. I mean, who would really want to watch an actual movie from the 80s? I wouldn't, because the camera style would just be so bad, and the effects would be so bad that it wouldn't be really enjoyable, so I'm just gonna ignore that. Alright? The pacing. They did the pacing a bit differently this time round. And see, in Paranormal Activity 1 and 2, the pacing was very slow paced. Like, for the first 40 minutes, all of the paranormal activity is very subtle, and then it slowly builds up, and at the end of both movies is where it gets intense. And whilst with Paranormal Activity 3, within the first 10 minutes, I'd say, there's already very, very intense paranormal activity. And then the scares gradually get scarier as they go along. But just before the ending of Paranormal Activity 3, they slow the pace right down, which made the ending all the more scary. Now, I probably would have preferred them to just do their normal slow paced start and then slowly build up, because you don't really get to care for the family in the third one as much as you did in the first two families. But I did like how they slowed it down before the ending. That bit was good. And the acting. The acting was okay, I guess. I mean, the two kid actresses, actually, Katie and Christy, the girls who played them, they were believable, I'd say, for an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. So those two did a pretty good job, I think. And I'd be really interested to see behind the scenes whether they got scared or not. Hold on, guys. Sorry, my battery's gonna run out in a second. I just have to put it in a charger. Okay. There we go. So, I was saying about Kate and Christy being really good actresses, and I wonder if they got scared while filming the movie, and I really hope that the directors did a good job of calming them down. The girl who played Julie in the movie, who was the mother of the two, she was alright. I mean, she was an alright actress, but there wasn't enough character development with her, because we didn't really get to know her very well. Like, in the first two Paranormal Activities, the mum in the stories, or not the mum in the first one, but the woman protagonist, I guess you could say, is always the one who believes in it, and the dad, or male protagonist, is the one who just thinks it's a load of crap. This time, it's the other way round. Right? The mum was the one who was disbelieving, but Dennis, the dad, really believed in it. And I think they did that because they were afraid that it was going to become a bit of a really cheesy cliche. So that's why they stopped it. Dennis, he was alright. I guess he did a good job as an actor. But the character who I really did not like was Randy. Now, I'm not saying the act of Randy was bad, but the scripted Randy was bad, if that makes sense. Because I just did not really like his character very much. He was a bit of a douchebag. And yeah, I just didn't like Randy. Now, the stuff I really did not like about Paranormal Activity 3, the reason why it's my least favourite, is number one, is because of the false advertising in the movie. Now, everyone's talking about how basically all the scary stuff in the trailer was not in the movie. In fact, I'd say only about 10% of the stuffs in the trailers actually were in the final cut. Now, yeah, I was disappointed with that, I guess. Like, some Pacifics, the Bloody Mary scene, that was cut. There was a Bloody Mary scene in the movie, but it was nothing like the one in the trailer. The bit with the head slamming was cut, but I was kind of glad, because I thought that bit looked a bit goofy. But the one that I was most disappointed about that was cut was probably the bit with all the fire in the trailer. Because the whole movie, I was expecting the house to burn down at one point, because that's what they said in the movie, that their house would burn down. Well, in the first two movies. And that didn't happen in the movie. But the other bit of false advertising I did not like were the taglines. Discover how the activity began. Discover the secret behind the activity. Alright, guys. Okay. Now, I appreciate that most of Paranormal Activity 3 was not answering questions. It's like Paranormal Activity 2. It raises a lot more questions than answered. There was only really one question that was answered in the movie, but the rest were raised. Now, I understand that because they have to be building a franchise out of this, and they have to keep the story going. But can we please not have taglines like, discover how the activity began? It runs in the family. Well, really, what was the secret behind the activity? We didn't really find out. There was no explanation, really. So, I'm thinking because of that Paranormal Activity 4 will be maybe following the same people, but set in the 90s, maybe. And just covering up some plot holes that the third one created. And the other thing I didn't really like were the cheap scares in the movie. Now, a lot of the scares I thought were really, really cheap. And like, they were intense, but there gets a point, particularly with found footage movies, where it's just too intense to be real. I'm not going to get into any specifics, but some of it was just so intense for a Paranormal Activity movie, and the whole point of Paranormal Activity is to make everything feel real. But there was some stuff in Paranormal Activity 3 which just did not feel real, because there's no way you can imagine that actually happening to you. And there was one scare in particular which I absolutely could not stand. It was cheap and pathetic. I'm not going to tell you which scare that is in the movie, but all I'm going to say is that it's easily the worst piece of footage in any Paranormal Activity movie. And as soon as I saw that for the first time, I was like, oh my god, this is Paranormal Activity 3? Subtle, creepy movies that aren't corny and are subtle, and there's that? Oh, I could not stand that. and there was an overuse of jump scares, I think. I mean, there was one that I liked at the beginning, but is more of a throw off. If you've seen the movie, you know which one I'm talking about. And I liked that one. But after that, I jumped in the first one, and after that, I still jumped, but I praised the first movie for not using jump scares, and this movie, I'd say, almost relied on jump scares to make it scary. I mean, the fear wasn't really your mind playing on you, and the psychological clever fear. The fear was more, oh, when's the next jump scare gonna be? And that was more of the fear in this one. So, I didn't really like that. I mean, there were some scares that were alright, particularly towards the end, but most of them were just really bad. Okay, now I've rambled on enough, so now I'm going to talk about some spoilers. So if you have not seen Paranormal Activity 3, please stop watching. Okay, I'm going to start off the spoiler section with talking about some specific scares in the movie. And I'm going to get the one that I mentioned earlier that I absolutely hated and could not stand. And that was the bit about halfway through the movie, maybe a bit more, where Katie is running and she bumps into something and you're like, what is that? Now, I liked it when she bumped up, but then the so-called Toby picked her up by her freaking ponytail and yanked her up in the air. I mean, why did that have to happen? It was so cheap and so cheesy. I could not believe that was in a Paranormal Activity movie. That bit was completely pathetic. Now, they tried to redo the kitchen scene again, like in Paranormal Activity 2, the bit that everyone loved with the kitchen cabinets. They tried to do that again, and it did not work as well in Paranormal Activity 3 as it did in the second one, but it was alright. The bit with the sheet ghost, I liked that scare. It was subtle and creepy, but what I did not like about it was at the start when the babysitter was just like, boo! At the camera. I mean, I was like, why did they have to put that boo in? I mean, it made me jump a little bit, but then after that little bit, I wasn't really scared of the sheet ghost. Oh well. Okay, now I'm gonna get into the stuff I did like. The ending of the movie. Okay, so just before the big ending, when they go to Grandma's house, but the haunting follows them to Grandma's house, the pacing slowed right down, which I liked. And the start of the ending was when Julie, Katie, and Christy has gone missing, and Dennis had picked up the camera and was searching around the house to try and find them, and then some creepy stuff happened along the way. Now, I absolutely loved the bit where he opens up, he opens the door to go into Grandma's room, I think, and then there's this whole group of witches all wearing that witch symbol in the movie. I thought that bit was epic, because like, it creeps you out because you're not expecting it. Because like, all of a sudden it's not really about paranormal stuff, it's more about a bunch of psychos. Now, they're related to the Paranormal Activity, but still. So I thought the idea of having witches was genius, I thought. And he finds Christy and tells her to hide in the closet where he visits Katie, but then Katie's face morphs into that demon face, which I thought was pretty cool. And like that's scared me a bit. Like I definitely wasn't expecting it. And then we see the grandma who snaps Dennis's back, and then she takes the kids up the staircase. She possesses them, and she's like, "It's time, girls." And then Christy's like, "Come on, Toby." And yeah, now I like the character of Toby. I think Toby has a lot of potential to become the next big horror icon. You know, Jason, Freddy, Jigsaw. I think Toby is the next big horror icon. Like, there's already rumours that Toby will come back in the fourth one, and I really like that. Now, Julie's fate is unknown. Like, she gets lifted up in the air and then flung back, but I wasn't completely sure if she was dead or not. And it wouldn't really make much sense if she wasn't, because surely the girls would remember if their mum was dead or not, even if they had been possessed by those witches and their minds were completely brainwashed. Surely they would have remembered that. Or who? No, sorry, I'm not making much sense. Who would of they had grown up with? Surely they would have wondered where their mother was. But I'm not like. I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I wonder how they do it with Paranormal Activity 4. Okay, now this review is getting a bit long, so I'm going to wind things up. So, Paranormal Activity 3, I liked it, not as much as the first two, but I really did like it, and I could not be more excited for Paranormal Activity 4. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.